Now, the thing about Uranus is that astrologers are not really sure whether or not to classify it as a malefic like Saturn and Mars. Similar to a lightning bolt, its influence is often defined by creative destruction and innovative disruption, driving the obsolescence of outdated paradigms, jobs, and technologies. And while these shifts ultimately foster progress, they can feel disruptive and unsettling in the short to medium term, creating transition periods marked by volatility and uncertainty. Indeed, if we look back to the accidental discovery of Uranus, we can see what havoc it wreaked, both politically and philosophically, almost from the very beginning. Now, Uranus was discovered by chance on the 13th of March, 1781, by the British-German amateur astronomer William Herschel, while surveying the fixed stars from his observatory in Slough, England. Initially, he thought it was a comet, but later observations confirmed it to be a new planet, the first to be discovered since ancient times. Before that, astronomers and astrologers worked with the 7 planets visible to the naked eye, from the Moon through to Saturn. The invention of the telescope changed all that, however. Indeed, this technological leap helped to transform astronomy from a speculative discipline into an evidence-based science, accelerating both the Copernican and scientific revolutions. Philosophically and cosmologically speaking, this would turn out to have enormous implications. It marked a profound transformation in thought and modes of inquiry, shifting scholars and astronomers from their traditional reliance on classical Greek philosophy to one based on empirical observation and experimentation. Much of this was driven by humanist thinking, which emphasized rational inquiry, individual thought, and open debate, as well as an inclination to challenge accepted views and traditional modes of thinking, all of which is typically Uranian in nature. And although Urania was for many years considered to be the muse of astrology, the planet, initially named Herschel, would ultimately prove to be pivotal in its downfall. Within a relatively short space of time, astrology would descend from the heights of its popularity, fueled in part by the printing press, which turned astrologers like William Lilly into celebrities, into little more than a pseudoscience, a relic of an outdated cosmology that could no longer offer a clear rationale for how or why it worked. In a nutshell, astrology's decline, though intertwined with the socio-political currents of the time, was fundamentally shaped by the rise of a scientific worldview rooted in cause and effect reasoning. As this perspective gained dominance, astrology struggled to present a credible explanation for its workings, making it increasingly difficult to sustain serious intellectual engagement. In an effort to preserve astrology's relevance, many astrologers of the 19th and 20th centuries sought to either frame it in psychological or pseudoscientific terms, often turning to naturalistic explanations that cited unseen forces like magnetism or the moon's influence on the tides as a way to explain the relationship between above and below. But this is to miss the point, for astrology does not operate according to physical laws of cause and effect, and it certainly does not subscribe to the artificial division between subject and object, science or religion, which is so embedded in modern Cartesian thought. What the Cartesian two-dimensional view fails to take into account is the fact that in the psychospiritual conception of reality, there are 3 dimensions and not just 2. For thinkers like James Hillman, Henry Corbin, and the Neoplatonists, what is missing is the animating, mediating world of soul, considered to be a mixture of the spiritual and material, which serves to bridge the gap between these polarized opposites. This dimension is accessed via symbols and images, and serves as a way to connect with the imaginal or archetypal realms, something I covered in episode 1 of this podcast series. According to authors like Tom Cheetham, this dimension can only be approached if we abandon our habit of confounding the subjective and the interior, or see the limits of the inverted and abstracted way of thinking that is so characteristic of modern culture. Indeed, as we have discovered in the technological age, abstraction and analytical reasoning have their limits and cannot be the sole means of navigating life or engaging with reality. Given the very uncompromising, overly rational, and sometimes divisive qualities of both Uranus the planet and Gemini the air sign, this seems to be something worth underscoring. For the astrologers, dreamers, and poets, however, there remains a way back, a means of recovering our connection to this realm, and with it, the more magical and soulful aspects of reality. Maggie Hyde provides an example of this, which is rather appropriately centered around a story involving the planet Uranus. The nature of the astrologer's orientation to what Hyde terms the one world brings us to Dupre, who points out that in relation to our orientation, reality does not remain indifferent to modes of thinking and feeling. In this sense, the perception of the astrologer is a vital component in determining the truth of the one world as real. This runs counter to the astronomer's assumption that if we do not accept the scientific definition of the real, we will be guilty of incorrectly seeing the world subjectively, as we wish it to be. On the contrary, the real shows itself to those who are able to see it. Thus, unlike the astronomer who bases truth solely on physical realities, the astrologer's perception is rooted in a symbolic attitude wherein signs and synchronicities can reveal hidden truths about things and thereby create a bridge to an animated cosmos populated by presences and brimming with life and meaning. This is readily illustrated through an anecdote about the new planet Uranus not long after its discovery. The astrologer Varley, a friend of William Blake, was anxious to know what Uranus, then called Herschel, might mean in his own horoscope. He awaited with some anticipation to see what might occur on a specific day, the 21st of June 1825, and at a specific time, a few moments before noon, at which time he had established that Uranus would affect him. On that day, at that time, his house burned down, and Varley's response was one of delight and satisfaction. Not only had his prediction been correct, but he now also understood something vital about the potentially destructive nature of this new planet, something I alluded to earlier in this podcast. The historian of astrology, Patrick Curry, takes up the story. Varley had lost his home and all of his property, none of which was insured. More importantly, however, in his view, he had verified both the precision of his methods of timing and the evil potentialities of the new planet. Meeting Varley later, the painter, Copley Fielding, asked him if the loss was serious. "No," he replied, "only the house burned down. I knew something would happen." As Maggie Hyde points out, Varley's orientation to the real is clearly not directed to the sublunary world of bricks and mortar or their material value. He is delighted instead that the new planet works, and the event has shown it to be not just a physical body in the solar system, but a cosmic symbol. It means something, and in meaning something, no matter whether it be fortunate or unfortunate, it reveals that Varley and his affairs are indeed connected with the cosmos, and that the cosmos itself is meaningful. Therein lies his true delight. So while the mechanics remain mysterious, we, Varley and the modern astronomer, might all agree that the connection is not causal. We cannot explain it rationally, but the compulsion to do so is in itself a result of the ontological inversion. This showing is not of the literal planet itself, Uranus' form being invisible to the naked eye, but it is a figurative or metaphorical showing, the coming together of the planet as a horoscope symbol with events in Varley's life, as witnessed by Varley. As Dupré reminds us, the nature of the real is determined by the nature of the relations among its components, of which mind is the primary one. Or to put it another way, soul is not in us, we are in soul. One can only hope that at some point in the future, we will come back to a more balanced philosophical place where such divisions are no longer necessary. In the meantime, astrologers have to content themselves with being outsiders to a larger extent, as I said, another Uranian quality, and to inhabiting two worlds, which of course is very in keeping with the dualistic nature of Gemini.